Hi everyone, Armoured Pants here, and I have the next tank for you in the American line. It's the Tier 8 T69 medium tank. A tank which is pretty good. It's not great, it's not bad, just kind of average. Can be played well, of course, like all tanks. We're going to have a look at the tech spec. As always, we're going to have a look at that using blitzhanger.com, which is an asset all blitzers should be using. Great asset. I'm actually a Patreon there, help to support it because I do believe it is a fantastic asset and a tool that should be used by all blitzers. Now, as I said, this is a decent medium tank. It's not great. It's not fantastic, but it is good. Now, in terms of provisions, I would run Coca-Cola because I like to have extra view range, which gets it up to 296.3. Also helps to reload in a magazine. There are two gun options. There's a 75mm and a 90mm. You need a 90mm gun because you're going to be playing against Tier 8 and Tier 9 heavies. The magazine has a 12.68 reload if you use calibrated shells, 12.41 if you don't. On terms of pen, you get 182mm of pen with AP, 275 with heat, and HE gives you 50 if you use calibrated shells, which I would recommend in this tank. Muzzle velocity is 914 meters per second, which goes up to 1188 meters per second with supercharge, and it's 1486 meters per second with heat, so therefore it has better muzzle velocity with your Pramo. I would run vertical stabilizer because as a medium tank you will fire a lot when moving, and you'll see the benefit of that during the gameplay which we look at. It has 9 degrees of gun depression like many American tanks. It has good depression. It has 14 degrees of elevation, which basically means you have good gun alignment. Good gun alignment. And what does gun alignment mean? Well, it means basically it's the ability to get your barrel in line with your target. If it's good gun alignment, it means it's easier, and it's easier with this tank because of the elevation and depression. It's also fast. It has 51.5 kilometers per hour, 20 in reverse, so it's an agile enough tank. But of course, like all American tanks, it has a poor power to weight ratio. What does that mean? Well, it effectively means that it doesn't have a strong enough engine to move the weight of the tank, which basically means that it is slow from a stop-start. It's slow to accelerate. Fast once it gets going, but if you're trying to accelerate from stop-start or go up a hill, you will notice it's a bit sluggish, and that is a characteristic of many American light and medium tanks, all the way up through the tiers and the tech trees. But nonetheless, you need to manage that. As I said, it's fast once it gets moving, but it can be slow from a stop-start. So if you're caught out in the open, you need to be aware of that. Concealment numbers are okay, just okay. It's 240 meters at 304 meters view range. What does that mean? Well, it means something like an RU with a big view range like 304 meters needs to get in within 240 meters of you to spot you up. So it's not so bad, right? Now, in terms of armor, it does actually have some armor, right? You can see here that it has a bit of armor on the front, and it has some armor on the turret, but it also has these amazing acute and multiple angles across the turret, and that means that you will get a lot of bounces from the turret, not just because of the armor itself, and you can look at the relative armor numbers here in the top left hand corner of your screen, but because of the angles of that armor. It's very easy for a shell that should go through to actually hit the apex of those armor joints and bounce off, and you will get quite a few bounces from the turret, even from big caliber guns because of that. If you rotate the turret, or if you're moving backwards when those shots hit, you get even more chance of getting those bounces. On the sides and back, you have no armor. You have really light armor on the butt of this tank, so it's very easy to get a Vindaloo round right up the butt, and like a guy who's had a Vindaloo the night before, after a few points your ass is on fire the next day, and it can be very painful. You are very vulnerable to big guns, so rim bore sigs, a waffle tractor if you're up tiered. T69 loves nothing better than getting behind you and giving you that big butt round of HE right up the a-hole, and it is painful and can mean you have a very sore and very short game. Now, in terms of tactics, Well, this tank can be played as a standard medium tank, of course. It can support lights and mediums. With its burst damage, which is well over 600, it means that you can do a lot of damage. You have 2.5-second reload between the shells in the magazine once you have a fully loaded magazine. So therefore, in just 5 seconds, you can unload over 600 to 700 damage points. So this can be an effective tank in that respect, but of course you need good shell management. So we've done this before, but we're going to take a time out and we're going to look at a mini tutorial on using a magazine loaded tank, because you have to play it differently to other tanks. Now this is a mini tutorial and we're just going to go through the essentials, what you need to know to play an auto-loading magazine operated gun system effectively. And we're going to have a look at a little bit of theory of how to do that. So when you play a normal tank, a tank that has a normal gun system, you engage the enemy in a linear fashion. What do we mean by that? Well, it means that there's a standard shell reload time between every shell you fire, right? Of course, you can drop adrenaline, but all things being equal, it's standard. So you engage the enemy at more or less the same level, a linear level throughout the game. Right, so and this is represented by this line here, right? So this line represents how standard gun system, single shell in the barrel, standard reload operates during the game. However, autoloaders are different. Autoloaders engage the enemy in cycles. There are periods above this line where you have increased activity, increased engagement with the enemy. That is when your magazine is fully loaded and you can do burst damage. You can then engage more and do more damage than a tank with a standard firing system. However, when your magazine is reloading, you have periods of inactivity, decreased activity, where you can engage and do far less damage and have far less influence on the game than a tank with a normal standard shell system. And they are the dips that you see in the graph. Therefore, you play in cycles. Right, and this is very important to note, and you must play to those cycles. So when you're in a dip, you need to do other things. For example, move to a strategic position, capture a base, stay in cover so that you're not being hit because you can't fire back. Simple things like that, but it requires discipline and it requires a different game style. You need to be aware of that. It requires also shell management. Here's some tips for playing autoloaders. Count your shells. Do not go into a brawl when you have one shell in the magazine, because you're going to have a big reload before you can fire again. Stay safe when you reload. Don't be out in the open. Go behind cover because you can't fire anyway. Use inactive time to reload. So for example, if you're doing a base capture or you're driving across a large part of the map to get to the enemy, you're not doing anything, you're not going to be firing, use that to reload. Even if you've got 2 shells left in the magazine, tap the shell icon and reload. The more times in the game you have a maximum number of shells in a magazine, the more burst damage you can do, the better able to engage the enemy. Remember to keep your shell icon open all the time. This is very important. And double tap to reload. You don't have to fire off a round if you've got one left in the magazine to reload. That's an amateur mistake for people who are only new to autoloaders. Tap on the shell icon and it automatically reloads. You don't have to fire off a round, which means you don't waste the credits, you don't blow your camo, don't give away your position, and overall it gives you a much better ability to manage your shells. And reload as often as you can, so you can do max burst damage as often as you can. Many times I've seen inexperienced players drive 20 seconds to engage an enemy with one shell in the magazine, whereas they could have used that time to reload the magazine completely. This is an amateur mistake. It's a mistake that players who are new to autoloaders often make. Learn from their mistakes. Don't be that guy or girl. If you have inactive time, use it to reload your magazine completely. Common sense, right? Now let's have a look at the T69 in action. We're going to have to look at some gameplay. On Rockfield, it's a supremacy game. Now, as I said, you can play this as a standard medium tank, following standard medium tank tactics. So I check the setup here, and what I decide to do is I'm going to go to C. I'm going to go to C because this is the light medium tank channel on this map. With my bit of armor at the front, I'm going to have also a full magazine loaded when I get there, plus my gun depression, because it's hilly around C. I have a good chance of engaging the enemy and doing some serious damage. That's the plan anyway. Now they've already got to C, so they have a lot of fast tanks there. Now I'm firing HE at this Dracula, and I don't know why I did that. I was talking to you guys about shell management, and one of the things about shell management is obviously having the right type of shell loaded up to fire. And I don't know why I had HE loaded up there. I may have been distracted beforehand, maybe when the kids was talking to me. Honestly, can't really give you a good explanation. What I do know is, though, I should have AP loaded. And instead of doing whatever I did there, 80 damage points, I could have done 600 to 700. Anyway, it goes to show that we all make mistakes. But even despite that dreadful start, this game ends up in a mastery game. Which you may find hard to believe given that disastrous start, but yes, it does. So you can see here the power of the auto loader, right? The power of having a magazine. I'm able to put 1 round into the Dracula. I don't waste any rounds, and I'm able to put 2 into T69. This is another important aspect about playing an auto loader. Unless you're playing one of the European line, where you have an automatic reloading autoloader, which means that when you have 3 shells in the magazine, you fire off 1, that automatically reloads and you go back to 3. This is a standard autoloader. When you fire off 1 round of the 3, you've only got 2 left. When you fire off another one, it goes down to 1, and then you fire off the other one, it goes full reload. The European line is more advanced and a much better system, much easier to play. So what does that mean for this tank? Well, it means that every round is precious. You don't want to waste them. It means that you don't fire off shots on spec as you would with a normal tank, or if you have a European auto-reloading autoloader. You need to make your shells count, because every shell you waste gets you closer to having that long reload. Now, what I wanted to show you here and why I slowed it down was, this is the difference between having supercharge and having the increased muscle velocity and not. Without supercharge, I probably wouldn't have made that shot. And here is the muzzle velocity, the gun depression, and also the vertical stabilizer in action. It enables me to make that shot as I'm moving over the slight impression in the map into T69 and clear him out. Now I'm on a full reload. We are a tank down. Also, they have good grouping. What does that mean? Well, it means that they're all together. One of the mistakes that inexperienced players make is that they often separate when towards the end of the game, when in actuality they should coalesce, come together. It means it's much easier for them to help each other and to do business and do damage and have a better chance of winning. Slow that down there to give you a detailed look at what we spoke about when we looked at the turret in the tech spec, right? That's exactly what we were talking about. That is exactly the bounces that we get from that turret with those angles and that armor. Big bounce there from the big 122mm gun on the IS. Now slow this down here to show you the heat shell in action. See how quickly that shell passes across the distance. No chance whatsoever of it not penning, straight through, and we get the kill. Also, you saw the importance of the magazine there, right? 1 shot missed or didn't pen, but I've got 2 more in the pipe and I'm able to clear off that IS-3. In a normal tank with a normal shell system, I wouldn't have been able to do that, and he might have had a chance to put another round into me while I was waiting to load up the kill shot. That's not the case here. Again, as we come around on the IS, you're going to see the gun depression in action. Here we go. And this again is the power of the magazine. Track him. And I've got 2.5 seconds. He can't get away. Boom. Kill. And this is the power of the magazine. And this is also why I said it's important to make sure you have the maximum number of shells loaded as often as possible. If I had come up with 1 shell in the magazine, I would have been able to track him, but he would have gotten away, and I wouldn't have got the kill. He maybe even got a shot in on me. but by having the maximum number of shells available, I'm able to track them, kill them. And that is the difference between having that's the difference between having enough shells loaded. And this is shell management that we spoke about earlier, and the importance of using downtime to manage your shells, manage that magazine reload. Remember, you're playing in cycles. Use your downtime to good effect and use your uptime to maximum effect. Simple as that, or as complicated as that. It depends on how complicated you want to make it, guys. If you're driving around with one shell in a magazine all the time, you're going to make life very complicated for yourself. So try not to do that. Okay, so there we go. Mastery game, as you can see. Good game, the T69. I do like the tank, but I have to say it's not one of my favourites. It's not particularly good at anything. It's not really bad at anything. And it also struggles when it up tiered because it only has a 90mm gun, right? And that 90mm gun struggles quite a bit when it's up tiered, and if you're up against an IS-8 or something like that. So therefore, it's, let's recap, it's just a decent medium tank, you know, but it's very good practice for the tanks above it, which are much better. It does struggle when it's up tiered, as we said. That 90mm gun is just a bit light when it's up tiered, I find. Train hard, fight easy, as the SAS say, or if you don't, you will train easy and fight hard. Practice the autoloader techniques. Play to the autoloader strengths, manage your cycles. Practice it maybe in a training room. Remember, you've got 12.68 second reload for the magazine if you use calibrated shells, which is not bad. 2.5 seconds between each shell in the magazine. Poor power to weight ratio, as we discussed. Like most US tanks, be aware of that. Slow from a stop start, but traverse is very good, which makes it an excellent brawler. If you have enough shells, count your shells before you get into a brawl if you can. Gun alignment is good, utilize that. It's very easy to get your barrel in line with the target. Turret armor is good, as we saw a big bounce from the IS, and that this and the gun depression are very useful. You can go hull down in this tank. Shell management is key. Keep your selector open and cycle your shells based on the target, and make sure you have as many shells loaded as often as possible. With this tank, I would play cautiously at the start. It is different to other tanks, so support your meds and lights. Use your burst damage to help them out, and then later on, when you get more comfortable, you can have more advanced medium tank tactics. Watch the medium tank guide for ideas on that. So cheers, Mush. Thanks for watching. I hope you found it useful. I hope you found it enjoyable, and I guess all that remains for me to say is pants off.